Reaction and opinion now from Jamal Abdi, Policy Director for the National Iranian-American Council, joining us from Washington. So, given the pressure Iran is under concerning its nuclear program and the international sanctions that are with it, do you think it would be in the interests of Tehran to be behind an attack like this?
I don't know about the interests of Tehran, but I wouldn't necessarily rule out some of the accusations that Tehran was behind this. I think that we have entered a very dangerous cycle of escalation between the U.S., Iran, and Israel. And given the attacks that we've seen inside of Iran against nuclear scientists, some of the sabotage efforts that have apparently been carried out by Israel, honestly, I haven't seen the evidence, but I wouldn't be shocked if Iran was behind this. And I think it's absolutely deplorable when innocent civilians are targeted by terrorist attacks like this, regardless of where it happens or who conducts the attacks.
Now, it took Benjamin Netanyahu just 2 hours to blame Tehran for the bombing, saying all signs are pointing to Iran. Do you think that he has grounds for making such a fast conclusion?
No, I don't think he has grounds to make such an accusation. I think it's an extremely dangerous accusation, and it really feeds some of the concerns that I know privately officials have in Washington have expressed, that these attacks that have been carried out between the parties, between Israel and between Iran, could somehow provide casus belli for a war, and could actually provide, in the case of Israel, not necessarily having a pretext to go into Iran and overtly attack its nuclear facilities. If you have a situation like this in which Iran is implicated, whether rightly or wrongly, for a terrorist attack, that could create the basis for an Israeli counterattack that may be perceived as more legitimate than a preventative strike against Iran, against a nuclear program that all indications are has not developed into a weapons program.
Now, do you think blaming Iran for this attack could be diverting the attention on Netanyahu's part, diverting the attention of the nation from Israel's domestic problems?
I don't know. I'm not sure about diverting attention. I don't know what the intentions are of Netanyahu. I do know that he has used some extremely dangerous rhetoric, and that there does seem to be a push by him to ratchet up the pressure for military action conducted either by Israel or the United States. And so, when we have this confrontation between Israel and Iran, this is a strong suit that Netanyahu has politically, the very hard line he has taken against Iran. And so, I don't know that it necessarily undermines anything that he's trying to do by immediately blaming Iran for this before even his own intelligence people have declared that Iran is behind this disgusting attack.
Now, the U.S. has recently reiterated its support for the Jewish state. How far do you think they would go to back up Israel should they decide to take some action?
I don't think the United States is going to have much of a choice, unfortunately, if it comes to a third party like Israel attacking Iran, or if Iran does something in the Persian Gulf and attacks or launches some sort of provocative actions against a vessel, a foreign country or a United States vessel there. I think we're on the precipice right here. And, this is a hair trigger situation. If something happens, the United States is very likely going to be sucked into it. And there are, the Pentagon, there was a leak a couple months ago, a Pentagon simulation in which they found that in the case of Israeli strikes on Iran, immediately you have the United States getting sucked into it. Immediately you have U.S. soldiers getting killed in a counterattack by Iran. So the ability to control a situation like this, once it actually does spiral into a war scenario, I think is going to be outside of U.S. hands.
All right. Thanks for your insight, Jamal Abdi, Policy Director for the National Iranian-American Council.